Right now, I am working on turning a formerly fairly high-end HP workstation. It's technically still high-end. It's just a few years old now, but this used to be a super high-end workstation, fairly expensive machine, new. This is what you would have found in, for example, a Microsoft Office, a Boeing Office, something along those lines. Um, you could have always used this for gaming, but you just wouldn't see something like this gaming simply because this would have been, I don't know, 1,000 grand and a half, 2 grand machine, depending on what workstation video card they put in it. So most people just typically don't buy these for gaming, even though you can use them for that. But now that it's fairly cheap, I can turn it into a decent gaming machine. So what this is it's a Xeon that's based on the exact same architecture as Core i7 first gen. So i7 9 series, 920, 930, 940, 950, 960, and then the Extreme Edition and 6-core chips. It's the exact same technology, and that's actually what I'm going to put in it. I'm going to put an i7 920 along with I think it's a 465. Looks like, yeah, GTX 465 video card. And we will have ourselves a halfway decent gaming machine when I'm done. So, start with the chip. I always want to make sure there's no caked on CPU compound on the pins or on the contacts on the back of the CPU. It's a kind of a pain in the butt to get it out once you've smashed it into the socket. Doesn't necessarily even ever hurt anything, but it's good practice. Do some fresh CPU compound. There's a lot of chips you should always use the stuff, but there's a lot of chips you can actually get away with not using it or not using anything fancy. But a processor with this high of wattage, you're definitely going to want to use a thermal compound. Over here. Go. So on these power supplies, they only have a single 6-pin. This isn't always the right thing to do, but this is a SATA. So a lot of people don't realize you can get these. They go from SATA power on one end to 6-pin PCI Express on the other. If you can get a power supply with the right plug support, that's the best thing. But in the case of a power supply like this, this has a, what do we look at? I thought it was high. It's like 480. Let's see here. 475 watt, 80 plus bronze power supply. There's enough wattage support there to do this. As long as you have the wattage support, it's okay. It's when you try to do a card like this, and let's say you've got a 300 and 350 watt that has only one PCI Express, then you don't have the overhead to do it. But in this case, it's okay to do it. So I'm going to connect that. I do prefer to have it on its own strand if possible. I don't really like running it on the same strand as hard drive or CD drive. It doesn't always matter, but I kind of consider it more of a best practice type thing. Okay. So the video card is pre-tested. I originally received 3 of them as part of a triple SLI, quad SLI, I think, setup. It's kind of an unusual build I received. So this should be a simple load Windows and call it good, because the machines are pre-tested and the video cards are pre-tested. So it should be a fairly simple build. Okay, so what we're going with here is an i7-920, 16 gigs of RAM with a GTX 465 video card. This is a solid starter gaming desktop. You're not going to be running all the latest and greatest games at crazy high settings at 1080p resolution. That is not the goal of a build like this. The goal of a build like this is to be able to play current generation games if you're willing to turn the settings way down. But previous gen games, literally, like, we're not talking 10-year-old stuff. We're talking stuff that's a couple years old, is going to usually run at low to medium. Some of them will run high, but most games are going to run somewhere between low and medium at 1080p, which There's a lot. Most of the games that I've seen since 2011, if you can run them even at low, they actually look good. Most of these games, you don't have low does not mean turned down so low they look awful. Usually, you'll get like low at 1080p, and a game like Crysis 3, for example, which is what I'm probably going to demo this with, will look awesome. And Crysis 3 still looks better than something like 90% of the games out there. I rarely see a modern game that actually looks better than Crysis 3. And a GTX 465 is a solid card for games. We're going with, has 2 hard drives in this. The machine came with 2. I'm going to configure it with both. Most people want at least a terabyte of hard drive. Standard DVD drive. Everything else is pretty standard. It's just in an HP box is all. Anyway, I hope that that is informative as far as what you can do with units like this. This is a great way to build a decent, mid-level, low-end gaming desktop with very little money spent. I mean, this would probably still perform close to as well as some of the new ultra low-end gaming stuff that they're selling brand new for quite a bit more. Definitely more RAM. But anyway, hope that's informative.